God's chosen ones. This week will be deadly if you ignore God's voice. The signs are all around you, whispering truths that demand your attention. You feel it in your bones. A shift, a pull, a moment where everything could change or crumble. God is speaking, not in riddles, but in clear warnings, guiding you through a week that holds the power to reshape your life. If you turn away, you risk losing what He's prepared for you. But if you listen, you'll step into a destiny so bright it will outshine every shadow. This isn't about fear, it's about focus. The world is loud, bills piling up, voices shouting opinions, chaos pulling at your peace. But God's voice cuts through it all, steady and unshakable. It's the quiet nudge that wakes you at night, the sudden clarity in a crowded day, the verse that lingers in your mind. You know it when you hear it. It's not a suggestion, it's a command. This week, that voice is your lifeline. Ignore it, and you could stumble into traps you never saw coming. Embrace it, and you'll walk through fire untouched. Pause for a second. If this is resonating, claim it. Drop a 777 in the comments to declare you're ready to hear God's voice. That number carries power. It's a signal to the heavens that you're tuned in, not distracted. Do it now, and let's keep moving forward together. You're not here by chance. You're a chosen one, marked for a purpose bigger than yourself. This week, God's voice isn't just guidance, it's a shield. Think of David facing Goliath. The world saw a giant, but David heard God's whisper, "I've got you. One stone, one truth, one victory." That's what's at stake this week, your victory. But victories don't come to those who close their ears. They come to those who listen, act, and trust. What's God telling you right now? Maybe it's to forgive someone. Maybe it's to walk away from a situation draining your soul. Maybe it's to step boldly into something you've been avoiding. The enemy knows this week is pivotal. That's why distractions will hit harder than ever. Doubt will creep in, whispering lies that you're not enough, that God's forgotten you. But those lies only work if you let them. God's voice is louder, stronger, truer. Picture Moses at the Red Sea, waves crashing, enemies closing in, no way out, but God spoke, and the sea parted. This week, your sea is waiting to split. The question is, will you stand still and hear Him, or will you run from the pressure? Your life isn't random. Every moment, every choice, every whisper from God is building something eternal. This week, He's aligning you with opportunities that could change everything. Your finances, your relationships, your purpose. But alignment requires attention. You can't drift through these 7 days on autopilot. You've got to lean in, listen hard, and move when He says move. Think of Esther. She didn't become queen by ignoring God's call. She heard, she acted, and a nation was saved. What's at stake for you? A breakthrough, a healing, a legacy. Only God knows the full weight, but He's ready to show you if you'll hear Him. Let's make this real. Drop another 777 in the comments to seal your commitment to listening this week. It's not just a number. It's a declaration that you're choosing God's voice over the noise. Do it, and let's keep going. The world will test you this week. Expect it. People will misunderstand you. Obstacles will feel personal. But God's voice is your anchor. It's not about avoiding the storm. It's about walking through it with unshakable certainty. Look at Noah. The world mocked him, called him crazy for building an ark in the sun. But he heard God's voice and didn't waver. When the rains came, he was ready. This week, your readiness depends on your ability to tune out the mockers and tune in to God. What's he saying? Maybe it's to rest when everyone's pushing you to hustle. Maybe it's to speak when you'd rather stay silent. His voice is your map. You're not alone in this. Thousands of chosen ones are walking this path with you, hearing the same call, fighting the same battles. Join them. Hit that subscribe button to stand with souls who refuse to ignore God's voice. Together, we're stronger, holding each other accountable to stay focused, to stay faithful. This week isn't just another stretch of time. It's a divine window. God's voice will lead you to decisions that could shift your entire trajectory. Think of Joseph, sold into slavery, locked in a prison, yet hearing God's promise through every trial. When the moment came, he was ready. Not because he forced it, but because he listened. This week, your readiness is everything. A single choice, guided by God's voice, could unlock doors you've been knocking on for years. A job offer, a restored relationship, a spark of clarity that changes how you see yourself. But you've got to hear him first. The cost of ignoring God's voice is steep. Look at Jonah. He ran from God's call, and it led him straight into a storm. The whale wasn't punishment, it was a wake-up call. This week, don't wait for the storm to force you to listen. Choose now to pay attention. God's not shouting to scare you. He's speaking to save you. His words are life, direction, protection. When you hear them, you'll see traps before you step into them. You'll find peace in chaos. You'll walk paths others can't even see. One more time, drop a 777 in the comments if you're ready to act on God's voice this week. Let the heavens know you're not ignoring this moment. You're all in, ready to move when he speaks. God's voice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet conviction, a sudden knowing, a verse that hits differently. This week, train yourself to notice. Set aside the phone, the noise, the endless scroll. Create space for silence, because that's where he speaks clearest. Think of Elijah. God wasn't in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire. He was in the still, small voice. This week, your breakthrough depends on catching that whisper. Maybe it's a nudge to pray for someone. Maybe it's a warning to avoid a decision. Whatever it is, trust it. God doesn't waste words. The enemy wants you distracted, scrolling, doubting, rushing. But you're not ordinary. You're a chosen one, set apart for a reason. This week, your ability to hear God will set you apart even more. Look at Daniel in the lion's den. The world expected him to be devoured, but God's voice guided him to safety. Your lions are circling, stress, fear, uncertainty. But God's voice is your shield. Listen, and you'll walk out untouched. Ignore it, and you're fighting alone. Your life is a story God's writing, and this week is a critical chapter. Every time you choose to listen, you're adding a page of victory. Every time you act on his voice, you're building a legacy. Think of Abraham stepping out into the unknown because God spoke. He didn't have a map, just a promise. This week, God's voice is your promise. It's the assurance that what's ahead is greater than what's behind. It's the guarantee that no matter how deadly the week feels, you're coming out stronger. You've got one more chance to claim this. Drop a 777 in the comments to stand firm in your choice to hear God this week. It's your way of saying, I'm listening, I'm ready. Let's keep moving forward. This week, God's voice will guide you to unexpected places. Maybe it's a conversation that shifts your perspective. Maybe it's a moment of courage you didn't know you had. Whatever it is, it's not random. God's weaving a tapestry, and every thread matters. Look at Ruth. Her simple choice to stay with Naomi led to a legacy that changed history. Your simple choice to listen this week could do the same. It could lead you to people, places, or opportunities you never imagined. But you've got to hear him first. The world will try to drown out God's voice with noise, deadlines, drama, distractions. But you're built for this. You're a chosen one, wired to hear what others miss. This week, sharpen that gift. Spend time in prayer, in scripture, in quiet. Let God's voice be the loudest thing you hear. When you do, you'll see his hand moving in ways you can't explain. Doors will open, burdens will lift, clarity will come. This isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. Keep listening, even when it's hard. You're not walking this path alone. Thousands of chosen ones are tuning into God's voice with you. Subscribe now to join them, to stay connected to this movement of faith and purpose. Together, we're unstoppable, anchored in the truth that God's voice is our guide. This week, expect resistance. The enemy knows you're close to a breakthrough, so the noise will get louder, the doubts sharper, but God's voice is your weapon. It's the sword that cuts through lies, the light that pierces shadows. Think of Jesus in the wilderness. 40 days, no food, Satan whispering temptation. But Jesus heard God's voice and stood firm. This week, you're in your own wilderness. The temptations might be different. Fear, anger, procrastination. But the answer is the same. Hear God, speak his truth, stand tall. Every time you choose God's voice, you're rewriting the story of this week. What could have been deadly becomes divine. What could have broken you builds you. You're not just surviving these 7 days, you're shaping them. God's voice is your blueprint, showing you where to step, what to say, who to trust. Listen, and you'll see miracles unfold. Ignore it, and you might miss the moment that changes everything. This week isn't about avoiding danger. It's about facing it with God's guidance. You're not fragile. You're forged in his fire, built to withstand whatever comes. Look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, thrown into a furnace, yet untouched because they trusted God's voice. This week, your furnace might be a tough conversation, a financial scare, a personal doubt, but God's voice will lead you through unscathed and stronger than ever. God's not playing games. His voice is your lifeline, your map, your victory. This week, make it your mission to hear him above all else. Let go of distractions. Trust the nudges. Act on the whispers. You're a chosen one, called to rise, to shine, to overcome. This week is deadly only if you ignore him, but if you listen, it's the week you'll look back on as the moment everything changed. God's voice is not just a sound, it's a force that reshapes your reality. This week, as you tune into it, you'll notice something remarkable. Your perspective shifts. Things that once overwhelmed you, like a mountain of stress or a tangle of decisions, start to look different. It's like putting on glasses for the first time. The blur clears, and you see paths where there were only walls. God's voice does that. It doesn't just guide, it reveals. This week, expect revelations moments where you suddenly understand why you've been stuck, why certain doors stayed closed, or why a struggle was necessary. Think of Peter stepping out onto the water. The storm was raging, waves crashing, wind howling. Yet Jesus' voice, "Come," was all he needed to take that impossible step. This week, God's voice is your invitation to step out. Maybe it's a risk you've been avoiding, like starting a new venture or confronting a fear. The waves will feel real, but his voice is truer. Listen, and you'll find the courage to walk where others sink. Ignore it, and you might stay frozen, missing the miracle, waiting just beyond your fear. Your heart knows when God speaks. It's that moment when a thought feels too big to be your own, when a peace settles despite the chaos. This week, those moments are your compass. They'll point you to choices that align with your purpose. Maybe it's a small act, like reaching out to someone you've been distant from. Maybe it's bigger, like walking away from a toxic job. God's voice doesn't always tell you what's easy. It tells you what's right. And when you follow it, you'll see how even the smallest obedience can unlock something massive. The enemy will try to muddy the waters. Expect confusion to creep in mixed signals, second guesses, or people pulling you in wrong directions. But God's voice is distinct. It's not frantic or vague. It's clear, like a bell in the fog. Think of Samuel, a boy woken by God's call in the night. He didn't recognize it at first, but once he did, his life became a bridge between God and a nation. This week, you're Samuel. God's calling your name may be in ways you don't yet recognize. Stay open, test the voice. If it leads to truth, to love, to growth, say it's him. You're not ordinary. The world might treat you like just another face, but God sees you as his masterpiece, crafted for moments like this. This week, his voice will remind you of who you are, not the version the world labels too young, too old, too broken, but the chosen one carrying a spark of the divine. When you hear him, you'll feel that spark ignite. It's the confidence to say no to what doesn't serve you, the strength to stand up when others back down, the clarity to chase what sets your soul on fire. Distractions are the enemy's oldest trick. This week, they'll come dressed as urgent emails, endless notifications, or drama that feels impossible to ignore. But you've got a choice. You can let the noise win, or you can carve out space for God's voice. Picture Mary sitting at Jesus' feet while Martha fussed over tasks. The world called Martha's work urgent, but Mary chose what was eternal. This week, choose like Mary. Find moments to sit still, to listen, to let God's words sink deep. Those moments will anchor you when everything else feels like quicksand. God's voice carries promises. And this week, those promises are active. They're not distant hopes. They're unfolding now. Think of Hannah praying through tears for a child. God heard her, and Samuel was born, not just a son, but a prophet who changed history. Your prayers, your cries, your quiet hopes, they're not forgotten. This week, God's voice will confirm what he's already set in motion. Maybe it's a financial breakthrough you've been waiting for. Maybe it's healing in a relationship. Whatever it is, his voice will guide you to it step by step. The world wants you to rush, to react, to fill every second with noise. But God's voice thrives in stillness. This week, create that space. It might be 5 minutes in the morning, a walk without your phone, or a moment of prayer before bed. Those pockets of quiet are where God meets you. Look at Jesus retreating to the mountains to pray. The crowds demanded him, but he knew the Father's voice was his strength. This week, your strength lies in those quiet moments. They're not wasted time, they're sacred. You're part of something bigger. Thousands of chosen ones are listening, acting, and rising with you. Subscribe now to join them, to stay connected to this movement of faith and focus. Together, we're not just hearing God's voice, we're living it, proving it's more powerful than any storm. This week, God's voice will challenge you to let go. Maybe it's a grudge you've carried too long, a fear that's held you back, or a plan you've clung to that's no longer His will. Letting go feels like loss, but it's not. It's freedom. Think of the rich young ruler Jesus met. He heard God's voice. "Sell all you have and follow me." But he walked away, clinging to his wealth. Don't be him this week. When God speaks, trust that what He's asking you to release is making room for something greater. Every time you act on God's voice, you're building a foundation not just for this week, but for generations. Your choices now ripple forward. Look at Abraham's obedience, leaving his home, trusting God's promise. It birthed a nation. Your obedience this week could birth something just as big: a legacy of faith, a family transformed, a purpose fulfilled. God's voice isn't just about today, it's about forever. Listen, and you're not just saving yourself from a deadly week, you're shaping a divine future. The enemy will try to make you doubt God's voice. You'll wonder, is this really Him? Am I imagining it? But doubt is a tactic, not a truth. God's voice aligns with His character: love, truth, peace, tested against Scripture. Lean on His promises. Think of Gideon, unsure if God was really speaking. He asked for signs, and God gave them. This week, if you're unsure, ask God for clarity. He's not offended by your questions. He's ready to confirm His voice in ways you can't miss. This week, God's voice will lead you to people who matter, not everyone. Some will drain you, distract you, or pull you off course. But God will highlight the ones who align with your purpose. Maybe it's a mentor who speaks truth, a friend who lifts you up, or a stranger with a word you needed to hear. Think of Jonathan and David. Their friendship was no accident. God's voice brought them together to strengthen each other. Be open to those divine connections this week. They're not random, they're ordained, chosen one. This message ends here. Come back tomorrow for another message.